Praise God, we are in the land of the living and are thankful to Him for His goodness, mercy, and grace. Welcome. From the set of choices, we salute and celebrate Guyana on attaining 59 years of independence. May God continue to bless and prosper us as we go forward. You know, a stanza from one of our national songs, the Song of Guyana's Children says, born in the land where men sought El Dorado, land of the diamond and bright shining gold, we would build up by our faith, love, and labor God's golden city, which never grows old. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us will show what Guyana's sons and daughters can be. Happy Independence Anniversary. God bless you, and God continue to bless beautiful Guyana.
You know, we want to continue what we started last week when we looked at Matthew and Jesus spoke about the whole notion of the weightier matters. And even as we examined the whole issue of the weightier matters, he identified them. He talked about justice, he talked about mercy, and he mentioned faith. And so weightier matters, really, those matters speak to the significance of moral and spiritual character, the importance of moral and spiritual character. So those matters were more significant in terms of morality, in terms of spirituality. So what Jesus is saying, if we want to measure how moral we are, how spiritual we are, we must focus on the weightier matters, because those matters are significant. That's why he described them as weightier. And he was saying that these matters are not ordinary matters or matters to be trifled with, because they really could really bring transformation in any nation, in any process that we're involved in. So the issue of mercy speaks to what? Compassion. Mercy speaks to forgiveness. Could you imagine, in the context of the family, in the context of a community, in the context of a nation, there is the demonstration of compassion, feeling for one another. There's a demonstration of forgiveness. People, look, as long as there is life, people will wrong you. And how do you respond? Do you respond a wrong with a wrong? And that's why he described it as weightier, because these matters are not easy matters to deal with. But he's saying that we must demonstrate these things. We must demonstrate compassion, forgiveness. And then he talked about justice. What is justice? He was reflecting on the issue of being fairness, fairness, doing what is right, doing what is right. I think it was Peter Drucker, he talked about doing the right thing and doing things right. Doing the right thing and doing things right. And so it is important that we do the right thing, if we talk about justice. And then the issue of faith. Jesus was saying, look, there's a better way. We must understand. And this better way will be made manifest as we begin to trust each other, as we begin to develop hope, as we begin to really rely on one another and develop some kind of interdependence where we're working together and moving a process forward. That's why he described these matters as weighty matters, because he's saying that as you look at these matters, he's saying, you know what you're doing? You are reflecting me, because I am the epitome of justice, faith, and the whole notion of mercy. I went to the cross for you. You didn't deserve it, but I went. You were justified because of me and what I did, and the whole issue of believing in him. And so Matthew was very keen on pointing out these matters, something that we need to examine. And if we could only apply these matters to our families, our nation, our marriages, our nation, we will be in a much better place and really be on a road to transformation. Gentlemen.
Dr. Hudson, you made mention of Weightier Matters. And I call to memory that quite recently, the media seems to have been inundated with issues of domestic violence. That's a weightier matter. But one might ask oneself, what is responsible for this? Is it a case of ignorance? Is it a case of fear? Is it a case of insecurity? Is it a case of cultural practice? So, as we consider these matters, I think of the mind, and there are two gateways that come to mind, the eyes and the ears, what we see and what we listen to. And in a lot of instances, we see things unfolding before our eyes, and we hear things that contributes to the outworking of this phenomenon. But we want to address it. We want to, be able to nip it and bring correction, because we cannot stand idly by and watch, especially our girls and our women folk suffer. So I strongly believe, the word of God will help us to be able to bring some form of guidance and inspiration to our men folk in most instances, so that we can address this issue and see Guyana and see the family in a better place.
Reverend Asana, you work a lot with young people. Are they concerned? Do you get the impression that they're actively concerned about the abuse that they see in homes? Are they concerned about this?
Yes, Bishop, they do. Allow me to put on the table an experience I had working with some at-risk boys. And one guy was held because he had perpetuated violent acts upon 3 men who were a part of his mother's life. He felt that they had abused her badly. And so he took the role of a judge. He went to one home, broke up all the windows with the intent of punishing him somewhere in his own little way. Secondly, he hid in some bushes and had a piece of wood, lashed him and broke his arm. The third one, he had intended to stab him to death. He never succeeded. He stabbed him, but never succeeded, thank God. What I found interesting is what he said and the interaction I had with his mother. He first said that if his dad was in his life, his biological dad, as bad as he is, he knew he would not have ended in this place. And when I spoke with his mom, she spoke to the issue of being provoked and she herself provoking. So he's in this confused world, and he's hoping to find justice and is looking for some solutions because he finds that his environment is confused. And so he couldn't really find answers, and so he took the matter in his own hands. I believe very strongly that there is a high level of abuse in our environment. In some cases, the abuse, I would say, comes from a level of men not understanding women and treating them right. And in many cases too, women not understanding men. What do I mean by that? Men are driven by ego, and sometimes men are disrespected and we just don't pay much attention to it. They lash out. So my brothers, yes, we understand. I don't know that is the right way to do it. And clearly the law should not allow you to do it that way. And in many cases, we don't value our women and their emotions and who they really are, and we become
This,
disrespectful to them.
Limar, as a practicing attorney, how would you explain that story told by that we just heard?
You know, one of the things, Bishop, is I had the privilege of being in the same room with Reverend Tasano when he heard that story. Um,
Wow.
yeah, we were doing a program and I found it very sad, because the guy regretted absolutely everything that he did. And, that is why the Ministry of Social Works is important because they provide an important service of rehabilitation and giving access to Reverend Asana and men like myself. Um, we had the opportunity to speak with that young man, understand his plight, understand his issues, and, you know, we offered him counsel. And I'm going to take that same opportunity to offer every young person, if you're a parent, you have a young man or a young woman around you, bring them, let them sit down and watch this program. If you're a young person watching this program, listen to the counsel that these brilliant men have to share on this panel today. Because one of the things when I was struggling, I shared with him, I said I looked up to my mentors, men like Pastor Sano, Bishop Messiah, different ones right on this program. But one man that I particularly looked up to was a man by the name of Raphael Jackman. When I attended VBS, he shared that he was once a convict. He got locked up for trafficking drugs. And when he was away, a lot of things happened with his family. And quite quickly, I understood. Now he's a pastor, so I wanted to know, what is former drug trafficker doing becoming a pastor? And he showed me the importance of valuing the decisions that you make, because every decision, every choice has a consequence. And he showed me the effects of his decision, because when he was away, a lot of things happened that he regretted with his family. you know, a lot of things, and he shared it blatantly, but I'm not at liberty to share some of those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And, he said he didn't get angry. He accepted it. He said, okay, this happened. This is my fault. So now I will make amends. And I told that young man, I said, hey, bro, you did all of these things. You committed these things. And thankfully, you're not going to jail and spend the rest of your life. But now is the time to take a hold of your life and make better decisions. I showed him. I said, I didn't born with a father. I didn't have a father either, just like you. But I looked up to the advice of those around me, and I provided and I offered myself and Reverend Asana. We offered ourselves as that counselor to look up to and reach out to whenever you have anything to talk about.
Dr. Keisha, can you speak to young ladies, to women right now on this subject?
Indeed, I certainly understand the challenges that we face as young women. As it relates to justice, for some of us, the question is what really is justice? And who really deserves justice? We read the newspapers, we see ever so often women that are being abused, and we ask the question, how many more young women? I pray today that our system, even as they navigate justice with the laws that we have within our country, we will remember that the law gives voice to the voiceless. And that justice would not be defined by who you're acquainted with. It would not be defined by your race. It would not be defined by your educational background, but that every young woman could know that they're covered, they're secured by the laws. And I want to speak to us as young women to know that you are valued in the face of feeling not necessarily always valued with every decision that is made in society, as long as it represents you as an individual. And so that even as we speak about justice, I would encourage you as well as a young person, if you recognize that you can be a voice, that's what I am being right now, a voice, because I felt as though because of where I came from, because of not necessarily having the financial backing, that I did not have a voice. But I echo the sentiments of Limar that when you are around the right person, I thank God for the men in First Assembly, because someone said to me, it looks as though you went through all of the doors of the men in First Assembly to be able to get guidance and counseling. But they did well. And just as how they would have provided that support, they would have seen a child in need of justice, not necessarily having all of the opportunities, but to be able to speak a word, deal with the weightier matters that I did not know how to encounter, to be able to turn my situation around. And now I represent, as a young woman, a voice for the voiceless. And so I really want to encourage you, it's okay to speak to the right sets of persons. My right set of person and my covering comes from First Assembly of God. And that's why I am proud to be a part of Choices, so that I can be able to speak. Tell your story to the right set of persons. That's where you would be able to get your intervention. Just don't tell it to anybody on the street. I pray that God will line you up with the right sets of persons that you are able to share, and that hope or quest for justice does not become one in retaliation, where you become an additional victim because you've taken matters into your own hand. So be encouraged that there is help. We just need to seek the correct person. First Assembly is one of the avenues that you can be able to use.
Dr. Paul, thank you very much. Dr. Paul, I mean, we pick up the newspapers and we shiver. Another woman abused in her home. Children abused, chopped, stabbed. And it has nothing to do with ethnicity, because all the races are involved. What's really happening? And what advice do you have for those men?
Thank you, Bishop. You know, the reality is, this is happening right across our nation. And may I add, other parts of the world. This battery, this abuse of men abusing women, and women, in some instances, abusing men. You know, I grew up in in village life, and as a young boy, I saw several times men beating women, abusing women, physically, verbally, to a sense that sometimes you laugh at it as boys. But I made a decision, because this matter is so heavy in my heart right now. I made a decision as a boy that I will never hit a woman. Never. I made that decision because, number one, my father, I never hit my mother. I can say that. I can safely say that. And that was a great example. But as we think about this reality, I want to encourage men and or women to find somebody to talk to. Lots of these abuse stem from issues, problems. Find a way to talk about your situation, about your problems. I remember my father used to go to the fence. His nephew lived right next to us, and would times abuse his girlfriend. He would go and, shout on him, what's going on? And you see that matter would resolve. There are people like Mr. Pilou. In those days, he was the dispenser. Nurse Kaulasar, Mr. Mujay, the dentist. These were highly qualified people. But when you visited them, they spoke in Creolese. What's going on in your life? I hear you hit that girl or something like that. And they would give counsel. We have to find a way to speak to these matters. Stop being silent. We know of instances of abuse and we're not saying anything about it. Please, let's stop this abuse and let's find ways to speak about how we can help each other, how we can help each other come out of this situation. So we're calling on men and women everywhere. Please shame out your shame. Find somebody that you can trust and talk to, because that is one of the first pathway, the first step in the pathway of getting help and seeking help.
Dr. Lee, Dr. Lee,
Bishop,
this whole question of people getting married, just boy meets girl and they get married, that has
this
got anything to do with these problems that we have?
apparently it has to do with it, because people, young couples really don't spend much time trying to, well, we know it as courtship, spend time trying to determine who the person that they quote unquote would have fallen in love with, their background, what are some of their views and perspective on life. If the relationship is, meant to last until, we say in the marriage vows, until death do us part, or it's just a short time, it's just to get pleasure, it's just to, as we say, to blow off steam and all of that. I think we need to encourage our young people. I grew up in the country too, in the village life, and the whole village, once you showed interest in a young woman, a young lady, the whole village would show some amount of concern to determine if you're really serious, if you just want to have some sex and then move on. And so I think there has to be a greater concern. We need to show greater interest. And I ask myself, moving on from that, am I an example? Can people look to me and find that example, that person who does not abuse? I have never physically abused my wife. I've never hit my wife. And so I'm concerned about the examples. In the village there, we had persons who intervened, persons who went into homes where there were physical abuse, where there's physical violence, and spoke to those persons. So I wanted to know if in society now, if we have lost the voice of reason among persons who can intervene and to save lives. We are inundated with the news of abuse ever so often, whether it's in the print, whether it's in the electronic media. How can we help? And I think help starts with me. I must be the example that persons can look to, and so that they desist from abusing their spouse.
Dr. Watson and Reverend Asana, that story that you told, Reverend Asana, really put a spotlight on a whole different set of situations in our country. How do you speak to those young people and parents? You'll have the final say, Reverend Asana. Dr. Watson, what do you say? This boy was so angry with how the people who were the men who were in relationship with his mom, how they abused her, that he ended up so unique. He ended up doing what he did. Talk to those boys who are planning to do the same thing.
I would say that the first thing that the whole issue of respect for your elders, respect for senior family members, and I think sometimes a degeneration comes because of how persons might be treated, and that goes both ways too. Parents not to provoke their children, and the children should respect respect their parents. And I think that's so important in terms of a response. But I think also training is also essential in the whole process. And so, I used to hear, and we still hear it, that the scripture says, train up a child when he's young, so that when he's old, he will not depart from a certain way. And so, training, I think, is very important. But I just want to throw in a little bit here on the issue of the abuse. My father used to tell me that man cannot hold property in man. Is not your property, so you can't beat up people because those are not your property. A person is not your property, and the Bible said that we have dominion over every other thing, but not over one another. So I think that, to my mind, also is important. And to the women, they must know that they're valuable, they're beautiful, they're not crazy, and they should not be made to stay in any relationship that is detrimental to them, because they're not mad. Sometimes they're made to feel as though they're bad, and that's why we're beating you and so on. You're lovely, you're beautiful, and like we've all been saying, reach out to people who can help you.
With 1 minute to go, Reverend Asana, do you believe that there are other young men like that?
Many others, Bishop. Many other young men, and many other young women. It is amazing that the environment of abuse seems to be growing, and we must stop it. And I pray that through the grace of God, you and I be able to discover who we really are. For the way we see ourselves is many times the way we treat ourselves, and we allow others to treat us. And God is the one who creates that identity of value and importance, of purpose. And it helps us to develop a sense of self-discipline and recognizing there are boundaries, and you don't go over those boundaries. Develop a sense of integrity. Develop a sense of attitudes that are community-based, that will help us not just to live, but contribute to the society in a positive way. And I submit, God is the only one that has the ability to help us to cultivate those kinds of development we need for success. I pray for every man who has abused a woman to repent and change your way. Don't do it again. It might have been a learning, walk away from it. I pray for every woman who has been abused, that she will rediscover who she really is in the eyes of God and live a purpose-driven life. May God bless us. Thank you, Bishop, for such an opportunity to share. Now, you've been a great audience. This is Choices. See you next time, Lord willing. On behalf of Bishop Messiah and the entire team, may God richly, richly bless you.
We thank you for joining us on Choices today. Remember, you can join us at First Assembly, LNP Durban Street, Workmanville, Georgetown, Guyana, for any of our special services. I'm Celacia on behalf of the set, reminding you that your whole life is the sum of your choices. God bless you.